The following is an 18PR production. From deep in the heart of West Texas.
And everybody knows Studio A or Ground Zero is at 18PR, and everyone knows 18PR is out yonder.
It's a one-of-a-kind, worldwide transmission. Heroes and Heroines File. The Free-Range Talent File. The Unexplained Files. The Ain't Love Grand File. Michael Shawn's Campfire.
And the Free-Range Texan News Network.
A clear and present detour on the road of everyday life.
You're listening to the Free Range Texan podcast.
With our host, who's been voted the hardest working man in podcasting, Michael Shawn.
Well, thank you, sweetie pie. Hey, we're laying tracks on Free Range Texan episode 32, fully manned and womaned and security dogged for the voyage that we're about to take here together. Our special guest is standing by as we'll be visiting with Al Pitrelli, who is the music director and lead guitar player and one of the original and founding members of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, currently on tour, but taking a moment to be on our podcast. This Free Range Texan episode 32 is a bell ringer. And as always, the best way to end any journey is, of course, at our campfire. Michael Shawn's Campfire promises to bring its own twists and turns to the mix. So stand by on the set. Everybody saddle up. Let's get ready to ride. Digital recording device will travel.
Young Padawan, there is a disturbance in the Force.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not like we broke anything, right? You're listening to the Free Range Texan podcast. Oh, yeah, and thanks for that.
Millions of fans have witnessed the concert experience that launched a one-of-a-kind rock holiday tradition. Trans-Siberian Orchestra, live in concert. The show that started it all. The all-new Christmas Eve and other stories like you've never seen it before. Presented by Hallmark Channel. The power of rock, combined with the majesty of classic. Coming to a city near you. Go to tsotickets.com for info. Don't miss Trans-Siberian Orchestra's all-new Christmas Eve and other stories live.
And our guest on the Free Range Texan podcast is someone we are just honored and excited to be able to talk to for a little while. We have none other than Al Pitrelli, who is the Trans-Siberian Orchestra guitarist, the music director, an original member of the band. And Al, welcome to the Free Range Texan.
Well,
thank you for having me today, my friend. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
You know, we'll tell people that this interview is actually taking place about 8:45 in the morning as it's being recorded. And have you been awake very long?
Oh, God. Yes, sir. I have 2 little children that are up every morning by 6:45. Lunches for school being made, a couple pots of coffee down my throat, and I'm already going. So,
well, now, how old are those kids?
My 2 daughters are 7 and 3. I have 3 boys that are all grown up and have wonderful lives, but I'm kind of back in the middle of it right now with these 2 little beautiful angels of mine. So there's no sleep in this household for quite a while.
Well, you know, so many people see a person that lives on stage in the persona that you do and do the remarkable work that you do, and many times it is lost on a lot of people that you are, in fact, a regular person when you get home.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, at my age, 35 years ago, maybe, that personality, you couldn't discern between work and home.
Yeah.
But at my age now, when I'm home, I mean, we work full-time all year long with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. But I've learned to enjoy the moments of when I am home, because as you know, and I know as I'm getting older, those moments are fleeting and they go by so fast. So I've really tried to kind of dig my heels in and live in the moment, especially when it comes to my kids, and just enjoy what we're doing at the time.
The Trans-Siberian Orchestra is famous for a lot of things. Your stage performances. There is nothing like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra presentation. And we're going to be putting videos up on our blog and a number of pictures of you, Al, so that our listeners can get a first-hand look at what your life is like and what you have been a part of the creation process from day one. Tell us a little bit about your life prior to Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Musically, it's kind of weird if you look back on it now, because everything that I have done musically, probably since I was a baby, was preparing me to work for Paul O'Neill, who was the founder and the creator of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Obviously, unbeknownst to me at the time, growing up in New York in the 60s, being part of the elementary school music department, and then subsequently, junior high and high school, listening to a lot of Broadway shows, that was real popular, being played on the radio when I was a kid, exploring different styles of music, seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, like all these things that kind of nudged my trajectory to want to be a musician, falling in love with music, not any particular style of music, mind you, but just music in general. Kind of just led me to the point where we are right now to have this conversation this morning. Paul O'Neill created the Trans-Siberian Orchestra with a very broad stroke artistic approach, meaning that there's no specific genre or style. He utilized all different works from all different styles to create these underscores for the characters in these beautifully written stories he has. So again, unbeknownst to me at the time growing up, I was studying classical music. I was listening to good old-fashioned American rock and roll. I was listening to bebop, show tunes, everything, as was he at the time. So when we finally got together and he asked me to get involved and work for him, we spoke the same language very fluently. It was just like one of those little it was a match made in heaven.
It sounds to me like you've always known music was your deal.
Yeah, exactly. There was no doubt in my mind. I would rather live in a storage locker broke and be a guitar player than do anything else. I mean, when I saw the Beatles in '64 and Ed Sullivan and the whole era growing up through the 60s and 70s, there was no doubt in my mind that I wanted to do this no matter what. Now, much to my parents' chagrin, mind you, they didn't really understand it and they were very terrified of it. But I worked really, really, really hard to just be good at something so I could do this for the rest of my life. And so far, that's what we're doing.
And you've been with Trans-Siberian Orchestra for, it looks to me like 21 years?
21 years of touring, 25 years almost now since I worked for Paul O'Neill on that first song we ever recorded together back in '95.
Your 2019 winter tour is going to find you performing in 66 different cities.
Well, the winter tour will be primarily in America on the 48 Continental, and then, I can't tell you how many times they've taken this over, around the world. The TSO community, who's really embraced musically what we do and the stories that Paul O'Neill and his family have created, music is very universal, so when we play in, Lubbock, Texas, or Dallas, or Houston, or wherever, then you take the whole rig over and you play in Vienna or Paris or London. Once the house lights go down, there's really no difference in country and culture and all that. It's just music lovers who are there to see a terrific show. For
instance, you mentioned Lubbock, Texas. A show done in Lubbock, Texas is the same show throughout your entire tour.
Oh, no, that's exactly on point. One of the things that we pride ourselves in is that no matter where we're playing, no matter if it's our first show of a tour, if it's our 50th show of the tour, it doesn't matter. The folks in Lubbock, Texas, in this case, will have the perfect first show because the people in that audience are seeing it for the first time. So we're going to rehearse this show in production rehearsals. Probably we'll do 40 or 50 run-throughs of the show in its entirety. So we know that the downbeat of our opening night on November 13th is a perfectly executed first show, as will the show be by you guys.
The whole thing is, for lack of a better term, explosive, and the music is just dead on remarkable. It is rock opera style and not like anything that anyone who imagines a rock concert has ever walked in the door and seen before. And the thing that I have noticed about your concert, there are people with gray hair who are standing literally in front of their seats with their arms waving in the air, and there are young people, teenagers, right next to them, and everyone is continually enthralled in your performance.
I think it's the honesty and the universal attraction or appeal of the show. You hit it on the head. And first of all, I thank you so much for all those kind of things you're saying. It is like the biggest, craziest, most over-the-top rock and roll show on God's earth, first and foremost, okay?
I believe musically,
that. Musically, it covers all genres like we spoke about earlier. There's something for everybody. Visually, it's something that people have never, ever seen. I mean, we could talk about it all day long, but unless you're sitting in that arena, you really won't comprehend the scale and the magnitude of the production that goes on. But at the center of the whole thing is this beautifully written story, Christmas Eve and Other Stories, written by Paul O'Neill. And his family decided that we're going to do that tour again with that story again this year. And what I noticed about that story is that everybody in the arena, including the folks on stage and underneath the stage, relate to the story because everybody misses somebody at Christmas time. There's always an empty seat at the dinner table, especially around the holidays. And, the holidays can become very bittersweet for a lot of people. So if you insert your name, your circumstance, or your story into Paul's words, the evening becomes about you.
And what you have just described is best reasons why that you have literally become a holiday season tradition for millions, whether it's listening to your music on broadcast radio or whether it's being able to attend one of your concerts. It is the type of thing, I think, when people see you for the first time, that it's one of those concerts they will remember for the rest of your life. And they're no sooner walking out the door and they say, hey, we got to do this again. Well,
now listen, and hearing you say that, means everything, because if you're saying it, it's truth. If I'm saying it, we're talking about the show and my vantage point. But your vantage point, I don't know how many shows you've seen in your lifetime, but the way you're speaking about our show, it means the world to us, because that's all we wanted to do. That's all Paul O'Neill ever wanted. That's what his family wants to continue on, is putting on the biggest, most memorable show ever that you can't wait to tell your friends about and come back and see it again next year.
There's that Alabama song that says, if you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. I think you guys have that covered in spades.
We have a great violinist, Miss Asha Mablana, who's our concert master, and we also have the privilege of using 6 or 7 string players from your community as well that we've been working with for years. So, getting involved with the community has always been paramount to us, and to play with great players globally now is it's a privilege and an honor.
Now, when you talk about getting involved in the community, there is a charitable aspect.
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing that up. $1 from every ticket purchased goes back into the community, and that's been from the jump. That's how we do things. Since our first shows in 1999 right through this coming 2019 tour, $1 from every ticket sold will go back into Lubbock, Texas. Now, that's Paul O'Neill, and that's his family. That's who these people are at their core. Generous, loving, caring, and they want to help change the world, albeit $1 at a time. But, if you do the math, $1 from every ticket sold over the course of 21 years is a lot of dollars, And look, Paul O'Neill, I remember when I first started working for him, we'd go out to dinner on a break from the studio, whatever. We'd be walking through the streets of New York City, and I'd turn around, and every time he'd be reaching into his pocket, and he'd be handing a $5 or a $10 to somebody on the street. And he would look at me and goes, "Look, dude, this isn't going to change my life, this $5, but it could change this person's day. And if we could do that, maybe it'll change that tomorrow and subsequently the week and the month. And if you do that enough, you're going to make a difference." The O'Neill family has made a huge impact, and they are changing the world. And I'm just proud to be part of it.
Well, and what a great, generous spirit. That is good to hear. In fact, it is refreshing. Let me just share with you, we are about to do something on our podcast. We have special permission from your head office out there in Los Angeles, and we've got a pretty powerful medley that we're about to cut loose with here on the podcast. There are people who are familiar with you, been to the concerts, heard your music on radio, and they're ready to hear it again. And then there are going to be other people that are going to hear you and really listen to it for the first time and realize how remarkably intricate and beautiful the music that you compose and create for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra is. And we're so pleased to be able to do that. Also, I want to mention that on the Free Range Texan blog, as of the time you're hearing this interview, there will be an article about you, Al, and also pictures of Al, and we're going to put some videos up on our Free Range Texan blog. And we had people that it surprises us remarkably all around the world really enjoy that blog. So we're going to have that up too at freerangetexan.net, and we invite folks to come by and take a look at that.
That sounds awesome.
Al Pitrelli, you are not only a great interview, you're the type of guy when we shut off the microphones and close the phone lines and we look at each other around the studio, that guy's a great interview. But
thank you. Thank you so much. Listen, it's a pleasure talking to you, my friend. It's just, the relationships that have been developed because of, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra is something that I'll always cherish, and, yours are one of them. So I appreciate your time this morning, and I can't wait to get back down to the great state of Texas and show people what we're up to this year. It's going to be incredible this year.
Well, if you ever need it, you've got a home at the Free Range Texan, and thank you so much, sir, for your time this morning.
You are so welcome, my brother, and thank you. Much love to you and the family and everybody listening.
Here it is, Trans-Siberian Orchestra on the Free Range Texan podcast. You've been listening to the Free Range Talent File. If you'd like more information about our guest, just go to our website at freerangetexan.net. Also, submissions to be interviewed on the Free Range Talent File should be sent to our website at freerangetexan.net.
Digital recording device will travel.
Hi, this is Michael Shawn. I guess you've heard what people are saying about my Campfire.
Well, there's one thing you can count on. Anything can happen on Michael Shawn's Campfire, and usually does.
As you listen to the Free Range Texan podcast.
Hi, this is Michael Shawn. Welcome to our Campfire. Thank you, Barbara Smith, for inspiring this story. Few people believe there's really such a thing as Sasquatch. A half-human monster living in the woods, especially not one who leaves a trail of enormous footprints and gut-churning stench in the air. They're more than just a few spine-chilling, seriously convincing stories about the beast. Like this one. Related to a highly esteemed author in his book, The Wilderness Hunter. The story concerns a man named Bowman, who, with his partner, made their living by trapping beavers. They set up camp in a small clearing surrounded by a dense forest, and once they set up their camp, they set out to place their traps. When they returned to their tent, they found their place had been ransacked. From their experience in the wilderness, the men presumed the mess was the work of a bear. So they cleaned up camp and began to cook dinner. After they had eaten their meal, Bowman walked around the area to make sure everything was secure before they turned in. There were no bear tracks anywhere, but there were enormous human-like footprints deeply embedded in the soil. The sun was setting by then, so there was no time for them to find another camping spot for the night. And in the wee hours of the morning, Bowman suddenly snapped awake. Had he heard something? There was no noise. But there was a terrible stench in the air. The trapper knew what wild animals smelled like, so he grabbed his rifle and fired in the direction of a movement between some nearby trees. The shot must have missed its target, because seconds later the ground around him shook, and then something enormous retreated into the impenetrable blackness of the forest. The next day, Bowman and his friend stayed close together as they made their way to and from their trap lines. By evening, they were exhausted, and when they returned to their camp, they once again found their belongings in total disarray. And more disturbing than that was the huge tracks the intruder had left. The trappers followed a clear line of gigantic footprints leading away from their camp and towards a nearby brook. The marks were clear. Whatever this thing was, it had walked on two legs. It was too dark to hike out from their campsite, so they built an enormous campfire through the night. They took turns guarding the site. All through the night, each heard branches snapping, and every now and then, a long, drawn-out moan. Needless to say, by morning, they were more than ready to make their way out of the bush. Bowman offered to collect their traps, while his partner stayed behind to break camp. As Bowman made his way to the brook where the traps were set, he found that one of them had been cut loose from the others. He looked downstream and saw the missing trap lying close to a beaver den. All of the traps were empty. He hurried back to tell his partner what had happened. When he reached the campsite, Bowman found it all completely in order, with packs wrapped and neatly arranged. His partner had done a good job, but oddly, his partner was not there. Surely he would not have hiked out on his own. Bowman called to his friend, but got no answer. He looked around. Then, there, lying beside a fallen log, was his partner's still warm body. The man's neck had been snapped, and there were 4 great fang marks in his throat. Bowman was terrified to see that the now familiar footprints of this enormous creature were all over the area. The thing must have ambushed his partner. As Bowman hiked out of the forest, he couldn't escape the sensation that he was, in fact, being watched. But eventually he did make it to safety and lived to tell all of the gruesome details of his encounter with the giant half-man, half-devil. I know what you're thinking. Who would have written such a wild story? The author's name will be familiar to you, I'm sure, because it was no other than Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States. Fortunately for campers around our campfire, these events took place in Idaho. So tonight, when you hear trees cracking under heavy footsteps, you should not be too concerned, even though there have been Sasquatch sightings as far south as Texas. Sweet dreams. I'm Michael Shawn. Just another cautionary tale from our campfire. Adios, my friends. I think we can all agree that episode 32 is just one more piece of evidence why Free Range Texan is being called the best little podcast in Texas. We just want to say hats off and thank you to Al Pitrelli and the Trans-Siberian Orchestra for a great spot on our Free Range talent file. And of course, Foxy the Wonder Dog, our security chief, has chased off a couple of UPS delivery people who attempted to breach our perimeter during the making of this podcast. Good dog, Foxy. Go get in the pickup. Remember to visit our blog, YouTube channel, store, Facebook page, all accessed easily at freerangetexan.net. The work has been being done on the Free Range Texan House of Treasures. We are back with a great Texas music display. We urge all of you to go to freerangetexan.net and take a look at that, because there is some good stuff showing there now. Take them home, sweetie pie.
Thank y'all for listening to the Free Range Texan podcast, produced at A-Team-PR Studios out yonder in West Texas, with our host, who's been voted the hardest working man in podcasting, Michael Shawn. Feedback or submissions to our program can be submitted on our website, freerangetexan.net. That's freerangetexan.net. This is Sweetie Pie on behalf of Michael Shawn and the crew here in Studio A, where we're all looking forward to spending time with you on our next bi-weekly episode of the Free Range Texan podcast. Y'all come back now. You hear?
Free Range Texan Podcast. End transmission.